Hey friends, Worm here, and not the kind that lives underground, but rather the short one that lives in the tree. And today we are going to talk about Overcharge and Surge, because I see a lot of players expressing concern over limits in build crafting with Overcharge and Surge weapons. So I wanted to just kind of throw my thoughts out there on this to the casual slash hardcore players. Um, and yeah, so let's start talking about what overcharge and surge are. Basically, overcharge is certain weapons, archetypes, or anti-champion weapon types that match the anti-champion mod, something like that. Will be dealing 25% more damage as long as they are the selected weapon. Which means basically, if you have, say, a pulse rifle that you really like, and the weak is pulse rifle overcharge, it sounds like you're going to be getting, a nice big damage boost, 25 to be exact, 25%, sorry, to be exact, to that weapon. Also, with the surge basically is based around elements. So, if you're using void, whatever, your void weapons are going to be dealing bonus damage to the enemies. I don't really know why people are complaining about this. People are saying, oh, like it's cutting into build crafting, it's gonna bust the game, it's gonna hurt build crafting, it's gonna this, that, and the other. I really don't understand how it's going to do that, okay? And here's why I bring this up. Number one, actually, let me back up a second. The reason a lot of the complaints that people have is that, oh, you're going to be making certain weapons force players to use certain weapons. And this is just not the case, okay? And what I mean by this is currently in game, if you're doing a Grandmaster like this week, and you're using a solar weapons deal 25% more damage, okay? Does that mean that you can't use Void? No. Does it mean you can't use Arc? No. Does it mean you can't use Stasis? No, absolutely not. In fact, as you watch here, in my footage, one of my teammates is using a Void Scout Rifle. He's doing just fine. Okay, and I think that a lot of people understand this overcharge and surge mechanic to mean that, like, oh, well, you can only use this weapon, or oh, you can only use this weapon, and that's not how it is. Like, it's not really much different than our current state of the game, because we currently can use other weapons in Grandmaster level content. We can use, any weapon we want. We can use any elemental type that we want in Grandmaster Nightfall, and we're fine, okay? And with this change coming to Destiny 2 with Overcharge and Surge, it's going to be the same way. None of these weapons or none of these elements are getting a nerf because they're not the surging elements or the overcharge weapons. And I think that's very, very important for players to remember, is that yes, if you're using an arc weapon, it's going to be dealing more damage, or solar, rather. I think arc is not one of the ones. But if you're using a solar weapon, solar weapons are going to be doing more damage, but they're not going to be doing anything differently. If you're using an arc weapon, it's not going to be doing anything differently than it was in current GM, the current version of GMs. And I feel like what a lot of players are reading is, oh, these weapons are getting a damage buff, and then non-overcharge weapons and non-surge elements are getting a 25% damage nerf. That's the way I'm reading it. Like, as I look on the forums and Reddit and stuff like that, lots of people, it's almost like they believe that the surge and the overcharge are nerfing other weapon types. And that's not the case. Like, if you love arc weapons, your arc weapons are still going to hit like they do now. At the higher level you get in terms of your light level, the more damage you're going to do. Okay, it's going to be just like it was, but if you're using a, pulse rifle and it's an overcharged pulse rifle week, your pulse rifle is going to be dealing 25% more damage. Okay, this is actually, if you ask me, this is almost expanding the build crafting for in-game content, because currently we only have elemental changes, right? So, your surge 1 week, or let's say this week, for example, the Nightfall is solar burn. Okay, so all solar weapons are dealing increased damage. But let's say, oh, like I really have I really like my stasis pulse rifle. a lot. You know, I can still use it, of course, but hey, next season, okay, if it's solar burn, but the surging weapon of the week is a pulse rifle, I can use the pulse rifle to the same effect, to the exact same effect as solar weapons. And that's very, very important to remember, okay, is that you know, you have additional ways to change up your weapons. And yeah, I'm 100% sure there's going to be a week where, you know, you love your Void SMG and it's going to be solar surge. Almost had solar burn, but it's going to be solar surge, and the overcharge weapon's going to be, a hand cannon. And it's like, oh, well, now I can't use my favorite stuff. No, you can still use your favorite stuff. It's just not going to be as effective as using these other weapons or these other elements. And I think this is a way of Bungie essentially trying to, bring players into new builds. Because here's the thing, if Bungie let players use whatever they want all the time, I think players would end up complaining about Destiny because builds would be stale. Your standard build, your standard weapon choices would get stale over time. Using Arbalist and an SMG would get boring. Okay. So now, or I'm sorry, so not so now, but so what Bungie does is they switch up the metas by changing surges and overcharge, which is essentially kind of, like I said, like the burns currently, the burn system. But yeah, it's I see a lot of people concerned about it. Guys, there's nothing to be concerned about. Okay. Your weapons that you like are going to do normal damage. They're not doing less damage. They're going to be doing less damage than certain types of weapon, but they're not doing less damage. You're not at a disadvantage to use, your Vex Mythoclast on a Void Burn week where there's no fusion rifle overcharge. And I think that players are again, they're doing what they always do. They complain about something before they have it. And I know I'm guilty of it too, even though I don't really complain about it. I prefer to bring up questions about it. But this is one I really don't think there's anything to be worried about. I think that, it's going to open up avenues for players. And it's going to help funnel players into trying different things, like getting out of your comfort zone. And it's okay to get out of your comfort zone. If I'd never got out of my comfort zone, I would have never, tried out the Osmiomancy Freezing Warlock build. And I love that build. I would have been stuck on my Solar Titan forever. Okay. And that's just kind of how it is. Okay, that's how it is. That's what a lot of players will tend to gravitate towards is, oh, I just want to use the same thing because it's easy, it's comfortable, and I know it. And Bungie is kind of forcing us to use other stuff. And it's always been like that in Destiny. That's the whole point of the anti-champion mods. Nobody would use sidearms if it weren't for anti-champion sidearms next season. Okay, like seriously, think about it. When was the last time you've seen somebody using a sidearm in PvE activity? Chances are probably not in a very, very long time. But now with anti-barrier sidearm coming back, I guarantee you're going to be seeing some people choose to use sidearms as part of their build, and they're going to choose, hey, you know what? I've got this, it's anti-barrier sidearms. Well, I've got this new build I want to try. And let's be honest, build crafting stems from Bungie shifting up the metas every season. Okay. We've seen it time and time again. Bungie changes, the anti-champion mods, and all of a sudden you've got a whole host of new builds. You got, oh, hey, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can use this gun. Like, here's a gun, that has been slept on forever, and now, like, oh my gosh, like, it's actually really, really good. We've seen that happen time and time again. So I'm not at all nervous or worried about overcharge and surge hurting our build crafting. I think that it's going to help the player base in terms of build crafting and allowing players to use and try different things. But like I said, if you're one of those players that you love a certain build, you love your Arc Titan and your crafted Insidious, and you just don't want to put it down, you can still use it and it's still going to be effective. Okay, you're not at a disadvantage. As I always say, you're not at a disadvantage for using Arc, like next season, you know, when Arc is not going to be one of the surges or overcharge, or sorry, one of the surges, you're not going to be at a disadvantage. Okay, but if you're using one of the surge weapons or an overcharge weapon, you're going to be at an advantage. Okay, and I know it's debatable. People will probably say, well, if you're not an advantage, that means you're at a disadvantage. And I don't think that's the case. A disadvantage would be a damage nerf. Okay, if Bungie said, hey, you know, we're going to have surge and overcharge, and if you're not using a surge or overcharge weapon, then you're going to be doing 25% less damage, that would be at a disadvantage. Okay, that's a disadvantage. But doing regular damage, it's going to be fine. You know, you're not going to be at a disadvantage. You're going to be at an advantage for using, you know, whatever the weekly surge or overcharge weapon is. But yeah, that's kind of all I got to say about that. You know, hopefully this kind of puts people's minds at ease. I know that probably the more hardcore player base is going to be, you know, kind of in agreement with me here, but I think the player base that is not quite so hardcore, the more casual player base, is going to be a little bit more worried about it. And that's kind of who I want to address here, is the casual player base. Like, guys, if you don't have as much time to build craft out the wazoo, it's going to be fine next season. You're going to be fine. You know, if you ever used a void weapon in a solar burn activity this season, you're going to be fine next season. You're not going to be at a disadvantage. But yeah, at this point, I'm just going to end up repeating myself. Like I said, just don't worry. Next season, you know, the overcharge and the surge is going to work out just fine. Okay, don't worry about something that you haven't had time to play with yet. It'll be okay, I promise. As always, if you're new around here, hit the sub button. We make daily content and we talk about controversial topics sometimes that really likes to stir up the community. But drop a like, hit the sub button, go check us out on Twitch at twitch.tv/thewormkeeper. And guys, I will see y'all in the next one. Bye for now.